Good morning, traders. Welcome to today's market review. This is Fred Razak at CMTrading. Today is August 25th, 2021, and today is Wednesday morning. So looking at the highlights of the day, the market's pretty much tapering off as we go into tomorrow's major economic events called the Jackson Hole Symposium. Now, this is where the FOMC kind of sets the tone of what they're going to do moving forward in order to kind of stimulate the market. Now, looking at today, there's no major economic events, but as we look at the various markets, starting out with the Forex symbols pretty much tapering off after that nice rally, looking at the indices, the Nasdaq steady on its highs after reaching record highs. Looking at the Dow Jones pretty much tapering off, and commodities, both gold and oil, taper off. Looking at the stock, Microsoft retraces after hitting new record highs, and Amazon bouncing. Lastly, Bitcoin pretty much settling. So everything's really tapering off. So let's take a look at the markets and see what we can expect from today's trade. So here we go. We're looking at the daily chart of the Euro USD, and not much happening. I mean, we're in a really tight range. I mean, to give you some perspective here, we're only in a 20 pip range, if at most, okay, from our high 1758 down to 1738-ish level. Okay, that's really very, very tight range to be in. Now we're tapering off here, okay, on a 4-hour chart. Really not much doing because we're at our 8-day moving average and we're above the 30-day moving average. But if we look at the daily, we're still not there. We didn't hit that 30-day moving average to make that break, which I would have liked to have seen, okay, which means that we're still relatively weak, okay. I would expect us to challenge the 1689 once again. Now, if we look at the Aussie USD, did taper off, but a little bit stronger than the euro, and did not hit that level or even close to that level of that 30-day moving average. Now, looking at the Gbp USD, this one is also a little bit stronger as well, a 137.20 after hitting this 136. So, I mean, ultimately, I'm still looking at the Aussie and the GBP a little bit stronger vis-a-vis the dollar in relation to the euro versus the dollar. Okay, so with that said, if we do have a retracement, I would expect the euro to retrace the most versus the dollar instead of these two pairs. Now, looking at the USD Rand, this is where we said we would get back to 15 flat, and that's where we're at. This is really a solid support level because, number one, it's a roundup number, and number two, we've had, on a weekly basis at least, several congested areas at this junction of 15. So with that said, if we do breach it with some volume, then we could see it further decline. But I don't think that that's going to happen. I'm more inclined to think that we're going to bounce off of this area, at least in the short term, with trading in relatively a somewhat tightish range between 15.25 and 15 flat. Now, looking at the Canadian dollar, this is where it was at. Yesterday, we spiked up to 129-ish level, and then we had that correctional move. Look at that. So that's a really cool level to really play at as we've hit this level and we're trading further down. Now, at this area, we look like we're consolidating, okay? We have been trading in a range here. Even though it's an upwards trend, okay, it's still looking like it's bouncing off that 30-day moving average on the daily, okay? That becomes very interesting because if we do breach it, and this does falter at 126-ish level, then we may see it break down further, okay? That's something to look forward to, okay, in case that actually fruites. Now, looking at gold, not much happening here, 1796, only a few dollars off of our highs. Oil also tapering off just a little bit after having that nice little rally. Today, we do have crude inventories coming out, so it might shed some light as to where we're holding in supply and in demand. Now, looking at the Dow Jones, all right, this is not major as we've just tapered off for a Tuesday. 367 down to 281, which is 80 points is really not much to write home about, as this has just been tapering off right before this major event tomorrow. Now, looking at the Nasdaq, not tapering off and not really retracing on its dead highs, but Microsoft kind of has lost its way. Okay, so at this stage, I'm asking myself, what is keeping this market so high. So remember, the Nasdaq is an index. It includes other stocks besides Microsoft. So could be some of the other stocks are actually lifting it up as this is all happening. Looking at Apple, you wouldn't see it here. Okay, 147. If we look at Facebook also, wouldn't see it here either. Now, Amazon, though, did get a little bit of a bounce yesterday at 3,300. That's not a bad bounce, okay, up from 3,179. So that's something to consider going into today as well. If this will extend its gains, we may see that continue with the Nasdaq later today. Now, I'm speaking of Microsoft before. This is the tapering off I was talking about. Had that nice breakout, and then we taper off to 301 after hitting 304. Now, this is very important. 300 is a very important level for Microsoft. So if we do break it, we may see some people taking some money off of the table. Now, just a year ago, guys, we were trading at $100-something. All right. So this thing has been very continuous, very solidified. I mean, it's been really very reliable in terms of its upwards momentum from 2017. I mean, look at that. We're looking at a weekly chart. That is beautiful. That is almost perfect. Besides what we got last year, where we had that massive sell-off as the coronavirus hit the markets, we sold off to 130, and now we're almost, I mean, we're for sure twice and a half as much of where we were in our low of $130 a share. So that is a big comeback for Microsoft as it's entering this new phase of hitting record highs here once again. So something to consider, okay, in light of where we've been. For us to taper off just a few dollars is not a big deal, but $300 is really an important level, okay, if it does breach it. Now, lastly, looking at Alcoa, did taper off after hitting that 42.45. A nice little comeback for Alcoa. Not much happening in JP Morgan either. Now, looking at Bitcoin, this is where it gets kind of interesting. We did taper off to 4,800. Okay, 48,000 that is. And with that said, we're just below our moving averages. On the daily, we're still above it. So I don't want to say that we've tapered off. I just think we've really just taken a little bit of a breather. Okay, so and this is also in light of tomorrow's major economic event as well. So keep that in mind going into today's trading environment. This is Fred Razak. I want to wish you guys a great trading day. Thank you.